Hi everybody, it's Noreen, and we're going to be working on sewing a neckband today on a knit garment. A couple years ago, we did a video on sewing a V-neck, and today we're going to work on sewing a round neck. And I'm going to show you a couple tips and tricks that I do to help keep us from having floppy neckbands. So let's get started. Here I have got a classic tee with a crew neck, and I thought this would be a good time to, before we get started with everything, to really talk about the difference between a neckband and a neck binding. A neckband is a piece of fabric that we've cut on the stretch that we're going to sew onto a garment, and then it's going to flip up, and that's what this is here, and you're going to see it. It'll be top stitched. A binding would be, we would put that same piece of, or a type of fabric on, and it gets turned to the inside and then stitched down. So you wouldn't see the piece of fabric that we've sewn on. It's on the inside. So that's the difference, at least what we are calling the difference between a neckband and a neck binding. And we're going to be talking about neckbands. And one of the biggest problems I think that most of us have, at least when we're starting out sewing our neckbands, is that they might dip here in the front. They get saggy right here. And I have figured out for myself, I've had a few of those, that there's a couple things that I was doing that might not have been the very best. And I'm going to go over those things with you today. So these are some of the techniques that I use that might be a little different than what you might be used to. One is that I'm going to test every neckband to the neckline every time. I used to just cut it by the pattern and put it on and then adjust from there, but that's lots of ripping out and that kind of thing. And all fabrics behave differently. And so I want to just take a few minutes to test. Now there is some math equations that you can do, and I've done those, but you can say in general that I need to measure this neck opening and have a band that's 85%. But depending on the type of fabric I have, that could be 83%. It could even be down to 80%, or it could be as high as 90%. So I just take a minute now to test out my fabric, and then I know exactly how my fabric on my neckband on this shirt is going to be. The other thing that might cause our neckbands to sag a little bit is how we stretch the fabric when we're sewing. And we always pin right here at the center front, right? That's how we match our neckband around. We mark our quarter points, we pin, and we stretch and sew. I know for me personally, I would hold here at the pin and stretch, and then once I got here, I'd stop, and then I'd hold here and stretch. And what's happening is that we're getting no stretch right here because we're holding it here. So we're stretching to here and then stretching away from here. So what a technique that I have learned to do, that I'm doing for myself, and I showed my daughter-in-law how to do this too, is I'll actually sew up to one of these points about here, and then I stop. That's where my needle goes down. And then I stretch. I'll take this pin out and stretch this all the way through. So I'm making sure that I get good stretch through here. But I thought maybe let's just start back at the beginning, and I'm going to show you how different fabrics respond to the neckline. Okay, I've got a classic tee here with a scoop neck all cut out. And I am going to show you how different fabrics will respond to this neckline in different ways. And I've got a double brushed polyester neckband here, and I've got mark my center front, and I'm going to get to my very first tip that I'm going to give you on how I get nice flat front necklines. And my very first tip is in how, it's not this one, this is number 2, checking to see the length of it. The first one is how I do that. And a lot of times you might have seen where you just put your edges of your band together. This is how we would measure, right, if we were measuring it well, and just kind of practice by pulling this around here and then seeing how that ends up in the back, and then that's where you would trim it. Mine still were flopping, and I got to really thinking about it, and what I noticed when I was looking is that when I put raw edges together, the finished piece of my band that's right here is actually longer than the neck opening, because this circle, if we measured from here to here, this circle is actually shorter than this one. This line from here to here inside on the seam line is longer. So I want short because I don't want it to be longer. So what I do is I do it backwards to what you might think, is I take the folded edge of my neckband and that's what goes right here on the seam line. That way, as I work my way around here, I know this is the finished edge and this is going to be exactly the right size. Okay, I normally would do this flat, but so you can see it better, I'm actually going to do it up here on my mannequin. So I've actually put an extra pin right here in the front, and that's just to hold the fabric down, so when I pull on it, it doesn't pull off the mannequin. But here's where my folded edge is. It's going to go right on the seam line. And I am just going to use my fingers, and I'm just going to pull gently, making sure not to pull here at the raw edges. I want to pull on this folded edge because that's the one that I want to smooth in really nicely. And we could pull this a lot and pull this around to fit, but then it would be too big and we'd have all kinds of puckers and gathers. So what we're looking for is to make sure, see if I just lay it like this, see how it's gapping? Can you see that? So we don't want that. We want to pull it on this, on the fold, we want to pull it just enough for it to just curve and lay flat. See that? So I'm going to put my fingers here and I'm going to do it up here again. I'm just, so that folded edge is laying nice and flat. Okay, keep going. As long as my folded edge is flat, I'm doing great. And we're going to come around here and I'll turn her around. And we can see that with this one, I'm ending up right at the center back. So this neckband fits perfectly on this one. All right. ITY is a real drapey, silky kind of fabric, and I really like it. And I like it for fortes in particular, but it can be a difficult neckband to work with. It's not impossible, but it just takes a bit more fiddling. So I would recommend that if it's twisting for you a lot, that you just run a little narrow zigzag along the neckband so that it's still nice and stretchy before you try to work with it. But we're gonna try and see what ITY does. We would put this here. Oh, you see, I just did it, raw edges together. We're not doing raw edges together. We are doing folded edges together. Folded edges, I can't talk today. Folded edges to the raw edge, right on the seam line. So here we go. Put that in there. And then again, we're gonna stretch this. And we wanna make sure we're stretching it enough that it's gonna be flat. If we don't, see, it'll be floppy. So we don't want floppy, but we don't want overstretched. So we'll just lay it in here. And same, right? I'm just gonna go all the way around and check this in the back. And then I would trim off what was extra. When I worked on my forte, which I'll get to show you in a little bit, I cut off about this much of the neckband for that particular pattern because that's how much extra it was, because the fabric was just different. It was just stretchy. All right, let's try rayon spandex. This is the neckband for this particular shirt. So we've got our center front. I'm going to put that folded edge to the seam line. And then I'm going to start stretching. Now, rayon spandex is very stretchy. And if you don't give it a good tug, it's definitely going to give you a floppy neckband. So I am making sure as I stretch this around that this is getting nice and flat. Let's turn her around for you. So come around, just keep stretching that folded edge, and I'm just holding it in with my fingers. Again, this works easier if you're doing it flat. And it looks like, here we are. This is my center back right here. And it looks like I'm about an inch too long. So I'll trim that off, not forgetting a seam allowance, right? So I'll trim that off, and that's gonna give me a much higher chance of a successful neckband. So after we've cut our neckband out, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the neckband for the fabric that we've chosen. We're gonna put it folded edge to raw edge in the center front, and we are going to stretch it around so that it fits the edge of our neck just perfectly. And then we're gonna trim it to fit. After that, we can mark our quarter points of our neckband and pin it on just like we normally would, where we match all the quarter points, and then we're gonna be ready to sew. Okay, so I've sewn my neckband together, and I've actually used my sewing machine to sew my neckband. I like to do that because I like this to be nice and flat. I have used my serger many times, but there always seems to be a bit of a lump in the back. So I've taken to sewing all mine on the sewing machine just so that they're nice and flat. I've marked the quarter points on my garment, and make sure to always put your center front and your center back together to find that quarter point on your shirt bodice, because it's not going to be at the shoulder. That's another reason we get bands that look wonky, is because we are using the shoulder as a quarter point and it's not. You can see here that the quarter point on this shirt is quite a bit from the shoulder. And so I folded my neckband into fourths as well. This is the basic directions that are in all the tutorials on how to put on a neckband. And I am going to start sewing mine in the center back. And I've got my machine set on a long basting stitch. And there's a reason I have stopped going straight to the serger to do my neckbands. And it's just because of what I was talking about before, how all fabrics just respond differently to sewing them onto the neckband. And so I just prefer to not have to do a bunch of ripping out. It's just easier this way to me, and I can serge it when I'm all done and I know that it fits great. So at this point, I've got my band on top. And I don't think it actually matters whether you have band on top or band on the bottom. But I am holding it way down here at the quarter point. You see that? And stretching it. And you can do this flat out on the ironing board. But I actually prefer the tension that my sewing machine gives me. And then once I've got this pretty evenly stretched, now I can put some clips in it if I want to, or pins, whichever is your preference. I like to pin at the quarter point so I know that they're staying put really well. But doing this, see, then I know I'm getting a pretty even pull around it. So that's one of the things that I do that's different. And now I'm going to grab it. And now I can make sure all my edges are even and start sewing. Taking my clips out when I get there. And again, we're just basting in. Now, here's one of my big differences in how I sew my neckband. So I used to just hold at the quarter points, just how we stretched just a second ago, and then sew to here, then stop and keep going. And that's what I had mentioned earlier. But what's happening at that point then, what I figured out is I wasn't always getting really good tension pull across here. So what I do instead now is I sew up to about an inch or so from there, and then I take my pin out and let it go. And this is also why I clip, because now I can see this clip for my shirt and I can see this clip for my neckband. And now I can grab it back here, just anywhere past that, and stretch it. I can stretch the neckband and match up those clips. And now I know that I'm getting good stretch all the way through that area. Then I can stop. And now we're coming up to the front of the neckband. We're on the front side, so I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna stretch this neckband out, making sure I'm getting it right on the edge here. I wanna make sure that I'm stretching this back part as well, not just the cut edge, right? If I was just stretching here, then I might not be getting the tension that I need for here. So make sure you're pulling the whole neckband. Put it down. Again, you can clip if you want to. After you've done it a few times, you might not need to. I'm just gonna hold. Stitch, stretch, stitch. And I'm going to do the very same thing that I just did over the quarter points with the center front. So making sure I'm getting some really good stretch across the front here. Then I'm gonna stop, needle down, and I'm gonna let it go. Then I can, this is a good way to check too, right? As long as these are not matching, this is one time you do not want them to match, because then you know that you've been stretching. So now I can grab it, you know, a little bit down, line up those clips, and sew across that, knowing that I'm getting really good stretch across the front. And we're back to a quarter point again. And again, I can stretch this out and put some clips in here if I want to just help. So I don't have to manage the whole thing all at once. But it's really up to you. At this point, you just need to figure out what works for you. But make sure that you're always, always, always stretching the band and not the neckband. Okay, so let's talk about that for just a second. So you see how I'm just trying to keep this flat, but it's this that I'm pulling on, not this. See, I could really stretch this whole thing out a lot, but I don't want to do that. I want to just keep the body of the shirt nice and flat and just stretch on the neckband. That's why oftentimes I grab it up here and just stretch this way. And I'm going to do that same thing when I get to this quarter point. I'm going to let it go, make sure I stretch across the quarter point, and gonna finish going around the rest of the shirt. Let's check it out, see how we did. Looks pretty good. Looks like, see, you can see on the wrong side of the fabric, I got some really nice ruffles going on here. That's great. Let's turn it inside out. See what we got. That looks great. Oh, that looks so nice. Now, do you see these little ripples right here? That's perfectly fine. It's normal, it's good. That means that we've stretched the neckband and it's pulling back down. When we press and top stitch this, most of that's gonna go away, and what little bit is left are the tension as we wear this shirt on our body. We'll take care of that. So this is great. Okay, I'm perfectly happy with this. I would now take this over to my serger, or you could use you could go back over it now with one of the knit settings on your machine if you'd like. You can use like a narrow zigzag to sew it, or a lightning stitch, or any of the other stretch stitches on your machine. I'm gonna do mine on the serger, and then we're gonna be ready to top stitch. All right, I've pressed it, and let's talk top stitching a little bit. You can top stitch with a variety, in a variety of ways. If your neckband and neck opening is big enough for your head to get through, you do not need to do anything special, but do a straight stitch. I lengthen mine just a little bit, then I just pick a place on my foot to follow, and off we go. And your goal is to catch the seam in the back so that you're holding it down. We don't want to stretch here. This is time we don't want to stretch. We want to actually sew to the curve of the neckband. So instead of straightening this out and stretching like we did before. See, I'm making sure it's really relaxed, that the neckband is laying nice and round, my neckline is nice and round, and then I'm going to just use my hands to guide this around like this, making sure that I'm keeping the body of the fabric nice and flat. There we go. Look how nice and flat that lays. There's no droopy neckband here. Here it is. Here is the neckband we just put on. It lays so nice and flat. This is great. Let me show you some of the other top stitching I have done. So remember that ITY neckband that we practiced on a little bit ago? It went on to this Forte. This is a View C. I love it. It's got the little ruffly sleeves, but here's the neckline. And I did a twin needle on this top stitching. Same process, just followed it around, making sure to keep the body of my fabric nice and flat. Here's a classic tee. Another one with a scoop neck. This one is made out of double brush polyester. And you can see on this one that I used a narrow zigzag to do the top stitching around. I think it's really pretty. It looks like a little decorative stitch. And then this is the classic tee with the crew neck that was up on that we played with up on the mannequin. And you can see that I used, matter of fact, it's hard to see. I used a really great matching thread, but I used a twin needle on this one as well. Thanks for hanging out with me and working on neckbands today. I really encourage you to pick one of the patterns, maybe one of the ones even that I sewed on today, whether that's the Forte in the A or C style that has that nice neckline, whether it's a classic tee where you have two options of a neckline, or laundry day tee, which is what I'm wearing here. And just go practice on those, make great neckbands. Biggest thing I can say is remember to fit your fabric, the fabric that you choose, right? That neckband to that neckline. I highly encourage you to try the technique where you use the folded side of the fabric on the raw edge to do that measuring, so that you're making your neckband exactly like it's going to be when it's finished, and to stretch through those points, whether it's the center front or those quarter points, to not just sew up to those, but to stretch through those so that you have good stretch all the way around your neckband. I'm going to see you next time. Bye.